What's up, champs? Welcome to another episode of the Short Shifts Fantasy Hockey Podcast, brought to you by Keeping Karlsson. I'm Jeremy Versillo, and joining me tonight, my pal and yours, Shams Benamor. Shams, how you doing on this Thursday evening?
Doing okay, just, soaking in that big Will Butcher trade, just trying to think of all the implications of it.
Yeah, the trade market is heating up, as we can tell. I'm sure it'll get even better going forward. Well, with that, let's jump right into the news. There was kind of a big defenseman injury yesterday. Why don't you tell us who's gone out of the lineup now?
So right now, all that we know is Josh Morrissey was unable to finish the last game that they played yesterday, and it was a result of a shot block that happened late in the first period. And this is kind of where it gets dicey, is that we don't really have any update other than that. And on top of it, they don't play until Saturday. And to make matters worse is that if you're thinking about, like I was, maybe Peeke is someone to pick up and whatnot, is that they don't play before the All-Star break. So their next game after this coming Saturday is not until February 6th. So we'll just have to kind of wait and see on Saturday. And then depending on that information, unless it's something serious, I think it's just maybe just sit on your hands and just wait to see what happens until after the All-Star break.
I think that makes a lot of sense. This is the time of year with injuries where the players get a nice little grace period with the All-Star break. I forget if Morrissey was selected to the game. I don't think he was, but either way, he's got now basically 2.5 weeks and only one game, which will let him heal up, assuming it's a minor bump or bruise. Or even if it's a 4-week injury, then you're getting significantly less benefit from rushing out to grab Neil Pionk than you normally would. Another piece of news is that a prospect that I really like saying his name, Shakir Mukhamadullin, got called up by the San Jose Sharks. Mukhamadullin was one of the pieces that they got in return for the Timo Meier trade to New Jersey. And when he was drafted in the first round, he was originally kind of a head-scratcher. People were like, well, this is a great third-pairing banger defenseman who I don't know why he's going in the first round. But since then, his offense has blossomed a ton, both in the KHL and this year in North America, and it's about time that he gets a shot. I actually asked our friend Victor Nuno what he thought about Mukhamadullin for redraft leagues, and he said, I think he should get a good amount of time and is decent for hits and blocks in the AHL. He has about 1 hit and 1 block and 2 shots per game. He's not sure if they'll give him power play time, but he is having that role in the AHL. And with both Henry Thrun and Mario Ferraro hurt, that's some defensemen that, maybe Mukhamadullin's up and getting a chance to show himself, at least until the All-Star break. I think it sounds like Ferraro may be back shortly after. So with a game Saturday and a back-to-back Monday, Tuesday, you could do a lot worse with a stream. Actually, that back-to-back is Tuesday, Wednesday. I apologize. What do you think here, Shams? Is this just fool's gold?
Well, it kind of depends. Is that in a deep league is pretty interesting because right now, hell, even with Ferraro being back, is that there's not a long list of people coming ahead of him. It's not like, say, people being high on Sanderson in Ottawa and be like, well, you have to beat Chychrun and Shabbat to get major playing time. Is that if he shows that he can play, he's in a position that he can do something. So that is something tempting. And as we've seen in the past, is that their defensemen are really put in a position to be able to do blocks and hits because sadly they don't have the puck that often.
That is true. The one fantasy benefit of a bad team. Question for you. With this being the second high-profile call-up in the past few days, would you rather Mukhamadullin or Olen Zellweger for your fantasy team?
It's really kind of a flip of a coin bait on my part. I'll be honest, I'm not much of a prospects person, but really the idea is that the way I would look at it is try to see who would stick the longest. And I'm not honestly sure which one of the two, because both of them are kind of that idea of could easily be back in the AHL once the All-Star break is done. But I feel like Zellweger has the higher shot if he somehow lands, let's say, power play 1 or gets points. He could kind of become something special, but I feel like the Shark side could be, you're more dependable, get your hits and your blocks, and maybe he gets the power play and then that evens more. So it kind of really matters of what kind of variance you're looking for.
The variance is a good way to judge it. I agree with you there. I'd be going Zellweger for the potential season-long impact. Mukhamadullin for the short-term impact, though, given the upcoming schedule weirdness with the All-Star break. One last piece of news for you. One of the lines, the Lotto line out in Vancouver, got broken up, and they've got a new top six and a player benefiting from it. Why don't you tell us who that is?
Oh, yeah, so it was kind of funny to see is that they were doing well for a while, but then they ended up deciding to really top-heavy their lines with in case you're not sure, the Lotto line was JT Miller centering both Pettersson and Brock Besser. And the first few games of it, I forget the exact amount, but it was just going off, just getting all the goals. But it seems like it kind of cooled off, and now they're going back to their kind of original-ish top six setup of Pettersson with Mikheyev and, in this case, Kuzmenko, and then Miller with Besser, and the winger this time around is Pius Suter. And right now, the real interesting thing is that out of those forwards, it's actually Pius Suter that's on the top power play with Miller, Besser, and Pettersson. So that is something very interesting because Suter got a hat trick last game, and even before that had a goal, and then both of the games had 4 shots. So feels like it's kind of the dance of it could dry up at any moment, but I've always been a fan of looking at the third wheel of the Miller-Besser line because those two are really good, and it seems like that third person's always been able to eat. And if you can add the fact that he's on the top power play as well, we're going to say this throughout the whole show, the schedule is weird, but just in abstract of just players' positions and having a chance to succeed, Suter is in a really great spot.
Yeah, I'm usually not a third wheel person when it comes to top lines on good teams, but I will say the power play time has me interested here. I would have to take a closer look at the schedule. I'm probably not making any moves on guys like that until after the break when we see what the first practice lines on Monday, the 12th or whatever day that is. There's a lot that can change then. Coaches can use it as a reset. Guys can get healthy. And all of a sudden, you may have a completely different look coming back in. On to some injury and outjury news. I'll go real quick. We've got 2 high-profile defensemen outjuries. Miro Heiskanen in Dallas and Zach Werenski in Columbus. Both returned from their injuries today. Werenski is the one that may have been dropped in a few leagues. I actually had to drop him in a league because of an IR crunch and did not get him back. He has a point in the first 3 minutes of the first period, so that's always nice. I think he's worth an ad if you're looking for a second or third defenseman to fill out your roster. He's not quite a stud, but he'll play on the power play. He'll get you a bunch of points. He's not an absolute zero on blocks, and he shoots a ton. Anything you have to add here, Shams?
Yeah, I think I'm in line with you there with that. The team needs Werenski, so he's just going to be put there in every situation. And as we're hinting towards on the show last time on Tuesday, is that this does really suppress that any hope of Boqvist continuing. So maybe just to kind of keep that in mind, and then if something is to happen to Werenski, and sadly that happens far too often, that makes him have to leave the lineup, maybe just kind of jump on Boqvist instead of waiting until the next lines, because he seems to be playing well when given that opportunity.
Werenski is a bit of a Band-Aid boy, isn't he? The one guy this does hurt, I'm not even sure if this is fantasy relevant, but Andrew Peeke, who was actually hitting and blocking a ton when he played, but wasn't consistently playing. He was kind of a keep your eye on 1 or 2 game banger stream. He got pushed out of the lineup, and I suspect he'll be pretty permanently out of the lineup from here on out. Another short-term outjury, Barkov and Forsling returned for Florida. They both looked pretty good in their first game back. I believe Florida put up a bunch of points on Tuesday when they played. And then we got an update on Joseph Woll. What's that update, Shams?
So the way it was set up, it's kind of still a little bit in the air, is that the coach said that they hope, and that was in quotes, that Joseph Woll will begin practicing with the Leafs after the All-Star break, though playing isn't imminent. So just kind of a wait and see, but just kind of a idea that he's still there, because I know Samsonov has had a couple of good games, and while, he seems to be either the best or the worst goalie, something to just kind of keep in mind in your back pocket is that Woll was getting a good amount of play when he was healthy, so that's going to be something that might end up muddying the waters, even if Samsonov is able to keep it up. So, if you got him off the waiver wire or whatnot, sure, enjoy it, but I wouldn't be trying to make any big trades or whatnot to get a hold of Samsonov because you think he's back.
I'm even more on an extreme end from you there. I think Woll is the starter when he comes back. I think he'll get 2 out of every 3 games type of thing, with Samsonov getting the rest. Even if Samsonov's good, only thing that could throw a wrench in that is if Woll's a bit rusty or still partially injured upon return. It seems like they're taking it nice and slow. He's a young goalie of the future, and he's also been out for a long time. I think he may end up on a conditioning stint to the AHL, especially since they have 2 borderline NHL quality goalies, I'll call them, in Samsonov and Jones, like guys that can hold down the fort. The team's not really suffering because of their lack of goaltending. They're still winning plenty of games. Last but not least, Ondrej Palat is back for New Jersey and in the top 6 now. What sort of fantasy relevance do you see this having? I actually didn't even see this piece of news until you put it on the rundown.
So I think it's kind of that idea of, a lot of times I've been seeing, I haven't been doing this, but a lot of people I've noticed have been picking up your Halas or your whatnot, is that there's been a lot of kind of tertiary people that have been kind of bouncing around on the top 6 that have been able to get some points. The thing is, I do like is that maybe this might be something to keep in line for going forward for like your 1-game streams or something until it hits, is that he is playing with Mercer to Foley, and the top line right now is Herscher with Bratton Meyer. So while he's not in the greatest spot, he is probably with the second best center that they have healthy, and it's someone that they could kind of, he has an experience. I trust him more than your, random Halas or whoever was kind of there before. So just kind of, your very deep leagues, or that situation where you're just looking for, the Tuesday, Thursday, or like, the random forward starts, but nothing to really, look at as a season-long hold.
I think he also has some additional interest level in banger leagues. He's a pretty physical player, rack up those hits. And if he happens to stay on that line when Jack Hughes gets back and he gets a stronger center, whether it's Hischier or Hughes, that's also interesting. I agree, he's kind of a low-end piece that for a good week he's an obvious streamer, and maybe in a deeper league or on a injury-plagued team, you'll hold him for a while. But you also have to remember that someone like Erik Haula could just take that role from him anytime, because Haula was having a great run for the last month or so. And with that, let's take a short break, and we'll be right back. Welcome back, everyone. As usual, we'll finish you off with some hot streaks and cold streaks. Why don't you tell us about our first hot streak of the night, Shams?
So I believe he has a goal already today, but we're just going to be talking about his last 5 games. Trent Frederic just seems to be scoring at will for a person that, honestly, I couldn't tell you what team he was on until I looked him up. Is that in the last 5 games, he has a goal and 4 assists. While he hasn't been shooting, he has less than 2 shots a game. He does have some nice bagger stats, having about 2.5 hits per game and then a little bit over a block per game. So filling up those stats depending on what league you're looking at. And then the interesting thing is that I'm not sure, I said third line when talking about him, but mid-game, last game, he got brought up to the top line with Marchand and Coyle. And then today he was listed as the third line again, but he got a goal assisted by Pasternak. So I feel like he might be that person that, when they put the blenders, or kind of what that spark plug of, every team has that bagger guy that, your Jake Neighbors or your that kind of person that they just got to be like, oh, we need to be physical, bring him up the line. So he has a long enough history of getting points here and there that I'm kind of tempted in taking a look at him. Like, I picked up JVR for my stream this week, and honestly, I did, there's no real way of knowing beforehand. JVR was the second line top power play. It made sense, but I would be much better off if I actually took Frederic at the start of this week.
I'm right there with you in the streaming JVR for all 3 fantasy points he got us in 3 games. Trent Frederic, to me, has big Blake Coleman energy. He's not shooting as much as Coleman, but he's getting tons of banger stats. He's a third-line player that consistently finds the score sheet. He'll get some fights, get some penalties, get some hits, and I think he's got a ton of value to the team in real life, and so he's going to continue getting those opportunities. Similar to Palat, though, I don't think he's a must-roster. I'd actually probably roster Palat over him if I'm looking long-term, but he's certainly a fun stream on those back-to-backs or off-night games. For our first cold streak of the night, I want to talk about a goalie. Nico Daws got lit up for 6 goals in his last game, and the game today, he let in 3 in the first 24 minutes or so and got pulled. I know it's only 2 starts, but with Vanacek right there, making more money, I think that there's a good chance that the Nico Daws season is over. It's probably back to a 50-50 or Vanacek taking more of the starts. You see anything different here, Shams?
I'm with you, and it's not even to that point now with these blow-ups that you can't be like, oh, well, with the other injuries as well. It's not like, say, Samsonov is like, well, the team's going to win for sure anyway. You're going to get that value. Is that kind of a rocky team with a goalie with the history, let's just say, with Vanacek? He's not a proven starter, but at least he's more proven than Daws. That he's currently a free agent, Daws, in my division. And I didn't even consider him, to be honest, because I have people of Mrazek, which I can't believe I'm saying right now that I probably have more trust in him than Daws at the moment.
Totally agreed. I'd be taking Mrazek over Daws. I'd be taking Blackwood over Daws. And, perfect segue time, I'd be taking this next guy over Daws. Who's the next guy that I'm talking about on our hot streak section?
Oh, we're talking about the punching bag that may have gotten a goalie or a coach fired, Korpisalo. He's looking at the stats now. I believe it's a 2-2 game right now, but the prior 4 games, he had 3 quality starts and 3 wins. And the interesting thing is that out of those 4 games, it was kind of a mishmash of players or teams to go against. One was against San Jose, 2 was against Montreal, and then 1 was against Winnipeg. And if you did what I thought at the start, you'd be like, oh, that one bad game was against Winnipeg. No, it was actually against the Sharks. So he was able to hold himself up against Winnipeg, and Montreal right now is, lit up Varlamov for 3 goals. So they're not, I'm not going to say they're a powerhouse, but they have some offensive ability. So it is kind of something to keep an eye on. And the part that really got me interested when looking at him is that out of the last 12 games, so basically this whole month, Korpisalo has started 9 of them. So if your league is something that values consistent starts, that's the thing that really piques my interest. And then, you're going to have your bumps and bruises because, the Senators haven't been, they're kind of in that Buffalo range of we thought they were going to make it to the playoffs for sure, but they have their ups and downs. But a goalie that's consistently getting starts, looking hot, or at least not a dumpster fire as he was at the start, I would be interested, maybe like how you were talking before, is I would kind of put him in that Mrazek Blackwood tier of you could get lit up at any moment, but they seem to be putting him in each time that if you hold him for long enough, those kind of start to even out into an average goalie in general.
Getting lit up in Ottawa this year isn't as bad as it sounds, because I was looking through his game log, and he has a lot of games with 5 goals on 39 shots or 4 goals on 40 shots. That's not that bad of a fantasy score, assuming that's those are your losses. You also have a handful of wins in there, especially with how Ottawa's offense has been clicking lately. And you mentioned that he's started 9 of the last however many games this month. It's because Anton Forsberg's hurt. Anton Forsberg hurt his knee or something and is on long-term IR. So they've got Mad Sogard up from Belleville, who's a very good prospect goalie, but is unlikely to get consistent game time this year. So yeah, I think the iron is hot for the striking with Joonas Korpisalo. I don't think he should really be a free agent in any league. I think he's kind of the bottom of the barrel for ownable goalies, but he's the volume starter that everybody looked for in the 13th round of your draft this year, where a lot of people were taking him. Meanwhile, guys like Daws and Mrazek and Blackwood and even Cam Talbot at this point are starting to cede starts to the backup. Korpisalo is going to get 2 games a week, sometimes 3. Last but not least, you have Rickard Rakell as a cold streak. I apologize to deferring for you for a second time in a row, but this one's completely off my radar. I don't have any shares of him or of anybody on Pittsburgh, really. So what's up with Ricky Rax?
So this is a kind of looking forward as well, because I hear you, lines can change at any point, but the team has been in a funk in general. You know, they literally scored on themselves last game with the goalie pulled for the delayed penalty. But so when you see, he has 2 assists in last 5 games, that was, you'd usually say, 0 points for 10 games straight before bringing the person up. But the interesting thing is that Rakell has been demoted to the 3rd line with Eller and Pusiston, and he is still on the 2nd power play. So the thing is that he's no longer has kind of the idea with Pittsburgh. It's like, as long as you're in the top 6, you got your Malkin or you got your Crosby, you're got in a good line. But now he's kind of demoted out of that 2 spots, not having points really before with them. That's kind of the scary thing for me, in that really the idea is that if you couldn't score with those great players, I'm not sure, we all know, Lars Eller has that hint of, love within kind of the community as being, a hard-nosed player that plays, hockey that coaches love, but he's not really that, dynamic forward that's going to set you up for points.
Another thing to keep in mind here is that Riley Smith has not been in the lineup, and I don't know what the timetable on that is, but as soon as Riley Smith is back, they were deferring to him over Rakell for power play and top 6 time, so it only looks worse later in the season. And real quick, because I just pulled up the scores to check, I am going to give you a bonus hot streak. Sean Monahan has 10 points in his last 6 games, including 2 goals and an assist tonight, 4 of them on the power play. The time on ice is great. He's on power play 1. He's not shooting a ton. This obviously isn't sustainable. I think he's more a 60, 65 point pace guy. But Montreal's power play has really been clicking lately with Caulfield and Monahan and Suzuki out there. The other thing, Monahan's likely to get traded is what I've been hearing. So once he gets traded, he's probably a 2nd line, 2nd power play, or even a 3rd line center. Maybe he goes to Colorado. That would be nice. There was a beat writer bragging about the fact that the Montreal Canadiens may be getting 2 first-round picks for Monahan because they got a first-round pick in order to take that contract, and he's been playing so well that they're going to trade him again for another first-round pick by March 10th or whenever the deadline is. So that's something to keep an eye on. In the short term, look at Sean Monahan if you need a streamer. And with that, thanks for joining us. Be sure to follow us at Short Shifts KK, as well as Brian and Elon at Keeping Carlson. Please use www.gamedaytweets.com to get all the best info from Twitter without having to deal with the rest of the website. It includes team by team and searchable tweets by player name. Visit that site and the other great sites we use to research our episodes with at Yahoo, Frozen Tools, ShiftChart.com, Icy Data, and Natural Stat Trick. Our intro and outro music was created by Pat Roach, and John Reed is our digital media producer. Until we see you next time, play smart and keep your shifts short.